Now, at the start of this course I explained that philosophy is, well, the reason for this rapidly receding hairline. Right? It comes from, oh, what is this guy trying to say to me? Now, what we have in the first paragraph of Sickness Unto Death, a Christian psychological exposition for upbuilding and awakening, is one of the densest passages in pretty well all of Western philosophy. Also, what we have here, and this is why I myself kind of enjoy the existentialist position, is, well, a bit of a joke at the same time. Right? What Kierkegaard is doing here is picking up the language of a fellow by the name of George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, right? Who is pretty well the culmination of this Enlightenment spirit, where, you know, in a sense, we have, as rational individuals through philosophy, come to a form of absolute knowing, right? He believes in this progress towards more knowledge and more knowledge and more knowledge, right? And Kierkegaard in this passage is picking up his language as sort of a mocking tone, right? And what's more, he's picking up a lot of the concepts that come out of the big book from Hegel, The Phenomenology of Spirit, which he's going to present not in a definitive way as Hegel does, but in sort of a problematic way as an existentialist would. Right? So one of the reasons I like existentialism is that they actually make jokes. Right? It's once you get past the language and once you get into the ideas, right? It's both of these figures. Kierkegaard and Nietzsche are the first two philosophers that I've actually, well, reading, I've actually come to a point where I've laughed out loud at them. Right? And what I'm going to do here is begin with just by quoting this ugly, ugly passage that I've asked you to read. The sickness unto death. Despair is the sickness unto death. So in case you were wondering, it's despair. That's what the book is about. Right? So when I say that the puppy dogs and ice cream phase of this class is over, we saw that with Hobbes. Now we're going to talk about despair, and in Nietzsche we're turning to what he calls the twilight of the idols, right? So this is, if you will, sort of the dark portion of the class. Now, with no ado whatsoever, I'm just going to jump into this. The passage reads, "A human being is spirit. But what is spirit? Spirit is the self. But what is the self? The self is a relation that relates itself to itself, or is the relations relating itself to itself in the relation. The self is not the relation, but the relations relating itself to itself. A human being is a synthesis of the infinite and the finite, of the temporal and the eternal, of freedom and necessity. In short, a synthesis. A synthesis is a relation between two. Considered in this way, a human being is still not a self." Right? It's just awful, isn't it? It's just awful. But it's our task to get through this passage and come to some form of an understanding, and I'm here to help you. Right? I'm going to start by just taking a look at this first sentence, which I have way up on the top of the board behind me. A human being is spirit. Right? And to explain this, what I'm going to pull on is a philosopher by the name of Martin Heidegger. Right? I did my thesis on Heidegger, and what Heidegger wanted to do is get beyond a lot of the dogma about the way that we think of ourselves as subjects in the world. Right? So rather than saying that we are a combination of body and soul, or falling back on the old adage that we're rational animals, right? Both of which sort of put us in a position where we're a combination of two radically distinct kind of things: body, finite, temporal; soul, immortal, rational, right? Rational animals. We've got these dirty desires, and we've got this divine faculty of reason. These are dogmas about the way that we think of ourselves as subjects. So Heidegger, actually picking up on Kierkegaard, who we had read, right, defines the human being as what he calls das Sein, literally from the German, being there. Right? So in terms of the sort of proto-existentialism that I'm introducing to you, the way that these thinkers try to think about the human being as a being that's kind of thrown into existence and asked to make sense of this existence, which is from an experiential, sort of experience-based position, where, you know, we are epistemologically in this situation where, hello, we're here, what does all this stuff mean? Right? Well, he's quite right. We are beings that are thrown into an existence. Hello, we showed up and we're trying to make sense of our lives. Right? Now, what Heidegger and Kierkegaard want to point out to us, right, is that this showing up in the world, just being here, isn't, it's not just a sort of a passive situation, right? We are, in Heideggerian terms, the beings for whom our own being is an issue, right? Which is a fancy, sort of complicated German way of saying that the human being is spirit. So the first term that we have to relate to is spirit. And the way that I want to explain what spirit is, so in a sense what I'm doing is I'm explaining the first three sentences here. Human being is spirit, but what is spirit? Spirit is the self, right? Well, what Heidegger and Kierkegaard mean by spirit is, well, frankly, it's nothing all that more complicated than what we mean by school spirit. Right? When we say that somebody's got school spirit, right, or political spirit, or that somebody argues in a spirited way, what do we mean? Simply that their actions and their disposition are ones that care. Right? We care what's going on. If I've got school spirit, I really care about my school. Right? If I've got the national spirit, it means I really care about my nation. Right? If the spirit is willing, right, that means that the spirit is one that's disposed in a way that cares to its activities. Right? When we say that a horse is spirited, right, what do we mean? That the horse hasn't been broken yet. When we break a horse, what we try to do is train a horse not to care that somebody is manipulating it, that something's on its back, that sort of thing. Right? A spirited horse cares. Right? Cares. It cares that something is on its back and manipulating it. Right? So a human being is spirit simply means that, hello, we're here and we care about our existence. Right? So I'm not simply passive about being here. Right? I'm not simply passive about existing. Right? I'm here, I'm in the world, I'm thrown into it, I'm asked to define myself in terms of this world, and I care about my own existence. Right? So the human being is spirit. But what's spirit? The spirit is the self. Right? So what makes us up, right, what defines us as human beings, is the fact that we exist and we care about our existence. We dispose ourselves to existing in a way that has to make our actions, right, and what constitutes our self, right, as something that's meaningful. Right? So, a human being is spirit, but what is spirit? Spirit is the self. Now, the next thing that we're going to have to deal with here is this rather ugly sentence. But what is the self? The self is a relation that relates itself to itself, or is the relations relating itself to itself in the relation. The self is not a relation, but the relation's relating itself to itself. I don't know about you, but just reading that makes me dizzy.